The old mansion on the outskirts of Ravenwood had stood abandoned for decades. Its towering spires and crumbling facade were a testament to its former glory, now shrouded in ivy and shadows. The townsfolk whispered tales of hauntings and curses, but none dared to venture inside. That is, until the day Emma Carlisle inherited the estate. Emma had always been intrigued by the supernatural. As a historian, she was drawn to the mystery surrounding her family's ancestral home. She arrived at the mansion one foggy afternoon, determined to uncover its secrets. The air was thick with foreboding as she pushed open the heavy wooden doors and stepped inside. The interior was a time capsule, frozen in a state of decay. Dust motes danced in the dim light filtering through stained glass windows. Furniture lay in disarray, covered in white sheets like shrouded ghosts. Emma's footsteps echoed through the grand foyer as she explored the house, each room revealing more about the lives of her ancestors. In the attic, she found a room that had been locked for years. The key, old and rusted, fit perfectly into the lock. With a creak, the door swung open to reveal a cluttered space filled with old trunks, broken toys, and forgotten memories. Among the debris stood a tall, ornate mirror, its surface covered in a thick layer of dust. Emma approached the mirror, her curiosity piqued. She wiped away the dust, revealing a pristine surface that seemed to glow with an inner light. As she gazed into the mirror, she felt an inexplicable pull, as if the mirror was calling to her. She shook her head, dismissing the thought as her imagination. That night, Emma settled into one of the old bedrooms, exhausted from the day's exploration. She fell into a deep sleep, but her dreams were filled with unsettling visions. She saw herself standing before the mirror, her reflection twisting and warping into a grotesque version of herself. The reflection's eyes were hollow, and its mouth stretched into a sinister grin. She woke with a start, her heart pounding. The room was dark and silent, but she felt a presence, as if someone was watching her. She dismissed it as residual fear from her nightmare and tried to go back to sleep. The next day, Emma continued her investigation, delving into the mansion's history. She discovered that the mirror had belonged to her great-great-grandmother, Lillian Carlisle, a woman rumored to have dabbled in dark magic. According to the journals she found, Lillian had used the mirror for scrying, believing it to be a portal to another realm. As the days passed, Emma found herself drawn to the mirror more and more. She would stand before it for hours, mesmerized by its reflective surface. Strange occurrences began to happen around the house, objects moving on their own, cold spots, and whispers that seemed to come from nowhere. One evening, as she stood before the mirror, Emma noticed a flicker of movement behind her reflection. She turned quickly, but the room was empty. Her heart raced as she turned back to the mirror, and to her horror, she saw a figure standing behind her, a tall, shadowy figure with glowing eyes. She stumbled back, her breath coming in short gasps. The figure reached out, its hand pressing against the inside of the mirror, as if trying to break through. Emma ran from the attic, slamming the door behind her. She could hear the mirror rattling, as if the figure was trying to escape. Determined to get rid of the mirror, Emma researched ways to break the connection between the mirror and the spirit trapped within it. She found an old ritual in her great-great-grandmother's journals, a spell that could banish the entity back to its realm. That night, armed with candles and herbs, Emma returned to the attic. She set up the ritual around the mirror, chanting the incantations she had memorized. The air grew cold, and the candles flickered as the spirit in the mirror grew restless. As she completed the final words of the spell, the mirror began to shake violently. The surface rippled like water, and the shadowy figure's face appeared, its expression twisted with rage. With a final deafening crash, the mirror shattered, sending shards of glass flying across the room. Emma shielded her face, feeling a rush of icy wind as the spirit was sucked back into the void. When the wind died down, she opened her eyes to find the mirror reduced to a pile of broken glass. The oppressive presence was gone, and the room felt lighter, as if a great weight had been lifted. Relieved but exhausted, Emma cleaned up the broken glass and secured the attic door. She hoped that the destruction of the mirror had ended the haunting, but a lingering sense of unease remained. The next morning, Emma awoke to find the house eerily silent. She felt a strange compulsion to return to the attic, despite her fear. As she climbed the stairs, her footsteps echoed ominously. She pushed open the door and gasped in shock. The mirror stood in its place, completely intact. Emma's mind raced. How was this possible? She had destroyed it herself. Her reflection in the mirror stared back at her, a look of confusion mirrored on its face. She stepped closer, her hand trembling as she reached out to touch the glass. Suddenly, her reflection grinned, a malevolent glint in its eyes. Emma tried to pull away, but her hand was stuck to the mirror. Panic surged through her as the reflection began to change, its features morphing into the shadowy figure she had seen before. "No!" she screamed, struggling to free herself, but the mirror's grip was too strong. The figure in the mirror reached out, its hand wrapping around hers and pulling her into the glass. Emma felt herself being dragged into the cold, dark void. Her surroundings blurred and twisted as she was pulled deeper into the mirror's realm. The last thing she saw was her own reflection, grinning back at her, its eyes glowing with a sinister light. When the townsfolk of Ravenwood finally ventured into the mansion, weeks later, they found no trace of Emma. The mirror stood in the attic, its surface pristine and untouched. Some say that if you look closely, you can still see her face, trapped behind the glass, forever screaming for release.